Good morning, everyone. The federal government shutdown is still going strong. A Massachusetts Democrat in Congress is here in the chair this morning to answer our questions. It's time to go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Thanks for joining us this morning, everyone. I'm Ed Harding.
And I'm Charmin Sacchetti, and joining us today at the table is Congressman Jake Auchincloss. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Congressman, good morning. Great to have you with us. So let's jump right in. We were talking about the shutdown right in the introduction of the pro. It's moving into its fifth week. Tax credits for people who get health insurance through the Affordable Care Act are set to expire at the end of this year. Democrats say that they won't vote to reopen the government until Democrats negotiate an extension of those subsidies. Republicans say that they won't negotiate that issue until the government reopens. Will the two sides eventually find compromise?
Yes. Before this shutdown happened, I led several other members of Congress in an open letter to Republican leadership in the House that laid out a big surface area for negotiation, a number of different starting points to get to yes. Reversing the worst of the Medicaid cuts that will raise premiums for Americans. Funding the COPS grants that allow local police departments to hire and train our police officers. Giving us a vote on the tariffs that have been the biggest tax hike in American history. And we said to Speaker Johnson, talk to us about these or other issues that you propose, but we need to deliver a win for the middle class before we ask the middle class to fund Donald Trump's government. And it's been radio silence from the speaker. And so
the Trump administration has cut back grants. Tell us about these COPS grants, cut back grants to local law enforcement.
Yes. In the March continuing resolution, which I voted against, the Republicans cut the grants that local police departments use to hire, to train police officers. And we proposed that we at least level fund those grants so that public safety can get back to front and center at a time when the president's approach to law and order is masked ICE agents who are operating without due process.
All right.
Is the head butting together, my term by the way, the head butting together because Republicans say they won't negotiate until the government reopens. Reopen the government and then we'll talk about these points. Do you believe that?
No. The Republicans have zero trust on health care with Democrats or with the American public. From the moment that Barack Obama signed the Affordable Care Act into law, Republicans have been trying to repeal, replace, undermine that compact with Americans. Why would we ever trust that Republicans would do the right thing once they get what they want?
All right, well, here in Massachusetts and, of course, in states across the country, SNAP benefits, they are at risk of running out at the end of October, which is at the end of the week. Governor Maura Healey is laying blame squarely on Republicans and President Donald Trump. She says there's no way the state can cover the loss of these funds. Here's a listen to what she said last week.
The state funding can't begin to match what the federal government provides. The federal government provides about $240 million a month in SNAP benefits to Massachusetts residents. There's no way that the state can make up for that.
All right, so she wants the president to reverse course, make sure SNAP is funded. The Trump administration says the program is going to run out of money. Now people are being caught in the middle. Would this signify an end game, this issue for Democrats here?
If the president treats it as an issue that affects American children, not as a, quote, Democrat program. The president has been saying, if this shutdown continues, I'm going to cut Democrat programs. Well, 2/3 of SNAP recipients are families with children. This isn't a Democrat program. This is a program that makes sure that kids go to school with full bellies. And if he recognizes the criticality of that, then absolutely we can get SNAP funded. We can get the full government funded. If he would rather focus on his meme coins and East Wing demolition over the needs of American families, then we're going to be stuck at this impasse.
Will this issue raise some urgency on both sides to find a solution?
The urgency is there, at least on my side. I was in Washington last week. I'm going to be in Washington next week to make clear to the speaker that he needs to bring the House back into session. He needs to swear in our new Congresswoman from Arizona, and we need to get back to work. Because we can't be sitting on the sidelines while we run the risk of air traffic controllers, of SNAP benefits, of home heating programs not being there for Americans who are going into the holiday season.
Who's going to bear the blame for this shutdown?
Well, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. Donald Trump opened up his term by declaring two things. One, he had a mandate. Two, he hates Democrats. So now Americans are seeing what happens over the course of 10 months of that philosophy. The middle class has experienced the biggest tax hike in American history, the biggest healthcare cut in American history, and corruption that makes a mockery of their respect for the rule of law. So Americans voted for Republicans. We're seeing what Republicans do in power, and they're the ones who own this shutdown.
And you mentioned the House Speaker. Mike Johnson says that the shutdown is being used, and I'm quoting the Speaker, as political cover for Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. The Speaker claims that they are worried about the flank of the Democratic Party and that Schumer will get a challenge from his far left. Is he correct?
I don't know. I'm not a New York politician. I don't know what Chuck Schumer's primary looks like in 2028. Frankly, it's not top of mind for me right now. There's always politics, right? It's the industry we're in, but it needs to be a politics of addition, not of performance. And as I said earlier, I put forward with other Democrats a number of ways to get to yes. It doesn't have to be our way or the highway. We talked about COPS grants. We talked about tariffs. We talked about Medicaid cuts. Talked about a vote on the Epstein files. We need, though, to demonstrate that this government is not just Trump's personal patrimony, but that this is a government that the middle class can fund with its tax dollars and then get something out of that they feel like is a return on value.
I just for the record, can I ask you, during the government shutdown, you're entitled to get paid, the president's entitled to get paid, Congress is entitled to get paid. Are you receiving your paycheck?
Members of Congress constitutionally have to get paid regardless, because Article 1, Article 2 separation of powers, but staffers aren't getting paid. They're missing paychecks. They'll get back pay when the government reopens. Same thing with air traffic controllers. The president is trying to do this jujitsu to pay the military, but it is questionable in its legality and can't persist. So this is no way to run a country. And if Republicans want to claim a mandate, then they have to govern like adults and get this done. Now, when Democrats take back power, we should fix this system from the roots, though, because this way of appropriating has been in effect since roughly the 1970s. Since then, only 4 years over the last 50 has Congress successfully funded government on time. It's clearly a broken system. I've proposed doing multi-year appropriations, agency by agency, so that we stop this sort of months of posturing followed by hours of thrown together deals. Let's get serious about it. But that is a reform for next term when we take back the House. Right now, let's get a deal.
All right. Your colleague, Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton, has launched a bid for U.S. Senate. He is taking on Senator Ed Markey, who will turn 80 next year. Moulton is 46, and he is making age a major factor in this race, arguing the party should have learned its lessons from the 2024 loss. First thing I want to ask you is, do you think the Democratic field is set in that race?
I don't know. I don't speak for every ambitious person in Massachusetts.
You decided not to get in, but do you think it's possible others could get in?
It's possible. Ballot's not locked until the spring. I don't know. My focus is not on the Massachusetts Senate race. My focus is on the majority Democrats. This is a group of 32 young elected leaders, mayors, governors to be, members of Congress, and senators who are seeking to be the vanguard of the reinvention of the Democratic Party by 2028. And we're going to communicate differently. We're going to govern differently. We're going to talk about ideas differently, because if the Democratic Party stays on its current course, we will be stuck in a cul-de-sac of minority governance.
Let me ask you this, because you did make a decision not to get into this race, but if Senator Markey were to get out of the race, would you potentially change your mind and get in?
I decided to focus on majority Democrats because I want to see the Democratic Party nationally reinvent itself. The requirements to do that are three things. It's ideas, it's talent, and it's courage. And these 32 inaugural members of this group, I think, bring all three to bear.
Are you endorsing in this race?
I'm not engaged in the Massachusetts Senate race because I am focused on the national imperative.
You just mentioned Majority Democrats. Earlier this year, you co-founded Majority Democrats, which is a group focused on building a center for the Democratic Party. And then you weighed in on the congressional race in Maine, where the state auditor, again Maine, primarying the moderate Democrat, Congressman Jared Golden. It's a race that could affect Democrats' hopes of winning a House majority in the midterms. You say that the Democrat tries to trip him up as helping MAGA. What do you mean by that? Connect those two lines, if you would.
So Jared Golden is a member of Majority Democrats. He, for 4 terms now, has been representing the Maine 2nd, which is roughly a Trump plus 10 district. And Jared Golden is, without hyperbole, the only Democrat in America who could win that seat. And any Democrat who tries to trip him up or undermine him going into that general election is directly helping his MAGA competitor. And I encourage Mr. Dunlap to drop out and to support Jared, because with Jared's victory, we are one seat closer to a House majority for Democrats, which is critical to putting a check on this president's worst impulses. By the way, I would also encourage Graham Plattner to drop out of that race. All right, this is a man who criticized and mocked police, rural Americans, and then put a Nazi tattoo on his body, and then told the Boston Globe that it, quote, wasn't a liability. I think it's a liability. And I think we should have high standards for United States senators, and one of them is you don't have a Nazi tattoo on your body.
It's time for him to go.
Congressman Jake Auchincloss is in the chair. We'll be right back.